Chapter 27 The New Preacher. Now we come to the most spectacular period in the life of our subject. Indeed, the life of Swami Abhedananda as the new preacher in America is so crowded with memorable incidents and interesting episodes that it would require volumes to describe them in full. To appreciate the glory of his mission and the greatness of his achievements as a Vedantist preacher, one should first look at his personal diaries, which Swami Abhedananda used to maintain regularly since he went to America in 1897. Next in importance is the volumes of press cuttings of the period which he used to collect and preserve methodically as records of his manifold activities in the West. Any study of his activities in America spreading over a quarter of a century would therefore be incomplete unless one looks at these valuable records. His diaries, it may be noted, are of perennial interest to those who love and value the civilization and culture of India. They bring to our view many a sealed page in the history of the Ramakrishna Movement abroad, while the 2 year-to-year press cuttings provide us with such information as are indispensable for proper appraisal of Abhedananda's role as the leader of the Vedanta movement and builder of the Vedanta society in America. We shall therefore refer to it in our subsequent narration, his diaries and press cuttings, which reflect distinctly the attitude of the American mind toward the Vedantic gospel. There is also another book which gives an authentic account of the activities of Abhedananda in America. We are speaking of Mrs. Mary LePage, that is, Sister Shivani, a disciple of Swami Abhedananda, in a book entitled Swami Abhedananda in America, the Apostle of Monism, which was published shortly after the passing away of Vivekananda. We gather from the publisher's note incorporated, this was actually passing away of Abhedananda himself. We gather from the publisher's note incorporated in this book that the authorities of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Movement in Calcutta for several years were eagerly expecting a published volume of Swami Abhedananda's achievements and activities in the West by one of his able American disciples. The book, though not a very big one, is full of interesting accounts based on the author's first-hand knowledge, and a glance through the pages of it would enable the readers to see the Swami in various phases of his magnificent character as the Hindu preacher, and also an able exponent of Vedanta. As it states in one, it also reveals the Swami as a loving master, healing the wounds of many souls that came unto him from afar and near. The book is equally valuable to some extent insofar as it throws light upon the history of the Vedanta movement in the West. And along with Mary LePage's book, mention should also be made of Wandell Thomas's highly informative book, Hinduism Invades America, which has been already referred to in the previous chapter. No account of Vivekananda or Abhedananda's life in America and their respective roles in propagating the Vedantic doctrine in the West would be completed without any reference to this book, which according to its learned author is simply a study of the amazing adventure of an Eastern faith in a Western land. It is an account of the serious impact on American life of Hindu philosophy and culture, especially in the form of organized religion. So Mr. Thomas's book is also of primary importance to a fuller understanding of Swami Abhedananda's activities in America. Historically speaking, what Vivekananda or his successors did in America was not merely the propagation of Vedanta. It was more than that. It was, in the sense, the spiritual conquest of the world by India, ridden by materialistic thinking, which characterized the closing decades of the 19th century, and the early decades of the 20th. Therefore, to understand the spiritual as well as historical implications of the Vedanta era in the New World, we have to look as much to Abhedananda's personal diaries and files of press cuttings as collected by him as to the books mentioned above. The Bloomsbury Square speech of Swami Abhedananda must have left Swami Vivekananda with the impression that his choice of a substitute was destined to prove correct. It was clear to him that his brother monk's religious attainments and ethical scholarship would stand him in good stead, and if he was sent to America, where the work was then gathering force, Abhedananda would certainly prove suitable to the work. It is on record that Vivekananda was of firm conviction that his brother monk, Abhedananda, was a born preacher, and wherever he would go, he would succeed. In this connection, one is also reminded of what Swami Vivekananda wrote in a letter to one of the monks at the Alabazar Muth, where he stated, Kali delivered his maiden speech yesterday at a friendly society's meeting. It was good, and I liked it. He has the making of a good speaker in him, I am sure. The subsequent life story of this young preacher has proved beyond doubt that Vivekananda was neither wrong in his estimate, nor he made any exaggeration about the capabilities of his beloved brother monk, on whom later his mantle fell. It would be helpful to us in appraising the full meaning of the life and mission of one of the greatest sons of India, if we remember what an American proper described of Swami Abhedananda in those words. Swami Abhedananda is a philosopher by profession, a lecturer by choice, and a poet by nature. And as we proceed in our narration, we will find in him the combination of all these traits to a remarkable degree, which distinguished him from the rest of the preachers after Swami Vivekananda. The Vedanta era in the West eventually commenced on the very day and at the very moment when Swami Vivekananda delivered his historic speech at the Parliament of Religions in 1893. And with the dawning of the era came the movement when the Vedanta Society was established in less than 2 years at New York, with a view to prepare a permanent platform for the propagation of the lofty ideas of Vedanta philosophy. The activities of the society, however, gathered momentum with the advent of Swami Abhedananda in 1897. Both Swami Vivekananda and Swami Abhedananda had but one mission in their respective lines: to place before the world India's ancient Vedantic ideal of life, an ideal so true and so full of promise to humanity, clothed in language suited to the understanding of modern man. A brief account of his life in London in the company with Swami Vivekananda would not be out of place here. The few months that Abhedananda had the opportunity of living in London with his leader were not in vain. During this period, he had the advantage of learning and unlearning many things that proved helpful to him when he went to America to take charge of the Vedanta Society there. The new preacher had so much impressed his English audience by his first speech that Vivekananda was quick to take notice of it, and later on he made this remark: "You have a resonant voice which has quite a strong carrying power." Indeed, it was so. Just as morning shows the day, so his London Bloomsbury Square speech had all the indications of the future successful preacher. This was the characteristic of his oration, which developed in the course of time to such an extent that he came to be regarded in America as the most powerful and profound Vedantist preacher and thinker, next only to Swami Vivekananda. As the great court garden residents in London, they all lived together: Vivekananda, Abhedananda, and Goodwin. Mr. Goodwin was indispensable to Vivekananda in taking down the notes of almost all the important lectures since the time this brilliant Englishman dedicated himself to Vivekananda's feet. Vivekananda was really fortunate in having in this disciple a faithful and intelligent recorder of his speeches, which are now regarded as the gems of philosophical and cultural thinking. Abhedananda had no such good one to record his speeches, which were thousands in number. This, perhaps, is the reason that what is available to us today is but a fraction of his lectures and discourses, spreading over a quarter of a century. Mr. Goodwin used to do the shopping while Abhedananda looked after the domestic affairs, including the cooking of the food. The court garden establishment had no servant or maidservant, and each member performed his own washing and other works. Sometimes Vivekananda helped his brother monk in cooking. His English friends would be frequently invited to taste the Indian dishes prepared at the London residence. At the instance of Abhedananda, once it so happened that Mr. Goodwin tried his hands in cooking without success. It was on this occasion that Vivekananda is said to have made this humorous remark: "How can one adept in the taking of notes of my lectures hope to shine in other vocations?" There were occasions when the young preacher would accompany his leader to various places where Vivekananda was scheduled to deliver lectures, and he would listen minutely each and every cadence of his delivery and the magnificent style of his oration. It is not unlikely that though Abhedananda had his own way of making speeches, yet he must have imbibed some of the traits of Vivekananda's public speeches or private discourses. It so happened that sometimes the Swami would become so much inspired that hours would glide by before he finished his speech. But the after effects were damping to his health, and he had to single remark shows the high esteem in which Swami Vivekananda was held by distinguished people in those days. We can imagine that his association with eminent thinkers must have afforded Swami Abhedananda an opportunity to study the mode of thinking prevailing in European minds at the time regarding Indian religion and philosophy. His stay in London was equally fruitful in seeing for him the true import and character of his leader's work in England and the interest it created there. As he later remarked, "His work seemed to me to be more spiritual than organized." As he had occasion to accompany Vivekananda to various public meetings, it became more and more clear to Abhedananda how even distinguished clergymen were caught up in this grandeur and freshness of thought that Vivekananda sent forth. He also saw for himself how distinguished intellectual and society people were captivated, and how the great moment was about to be born in the name of the Master. As was later written, he centered the spirit, leaving the form to be organized later, in whatsoever way it might be possible. The implication underlying this remark of Swami Abhedananda is worth remembering when we come to consider his life as a preacher of Vedanta. This task of organizing the movement on a sound footing, as we all know, was left to Abhedananda, who himself was an organizer, preacher, and a monk, all combined into one. And it is in this sense that his work in America must be regarded. It may well be said that his grooming as the new preacher of the Ramakrishna order was almost complete when Vivekananda left for India, leaving the charge of his London work to Abhedananda. Regarding his work in London during the absence of his leader, we quote the following from the earliest edition of the principal English biography of Swami Vivekananda. Turning now to the Vedanta movement carried on in the West during the Swamiji's absence, we notice that Swami Abhedananda, who had taken charge of the classes in London, continued them ably and daily added his own power as a teacher. He also conducted classes in Wimbledon and other places, and began a series of lectures beginning on January 12th, after the Christians and New Year's holdings. His exposition of Vedanta was very lucid and instructive. The plan pursued was rather different from what that formerly followed. One lecture given early in the week on a morning was repeated to a different audience assembled on another evening, and the whole of another morning was given to questions and objections arising either from the lecture or the Vedanta position in general. This new plan gave great satisfaction, and several positions and difficult points were heartily worked upon, and much light was thrown upon them. There was no doubt that he was becoming more and more popular. It was just at the beginning of his popularity in London that Abhedananda had to respond to the urgent and repeated calls from the Vedanta Society of New York, and he was obliged to leave for America in the latter part of July 1897, after working for some 10 months in London. The entire Brotherhood now rose to the occasion to preach to the world the Master's message of universal love and truth. Vivekananda, Shardananda, Abhedananda, Turiyananda, and other members of the Brotherhood now dedicated themselves to this great task, and through it there emerged, after many years, India as the spiritual teacher of the world, which then stood at the crossroads of materialism and science.